Thank you. Well, good morning, Sea Pines. It's a great day. It's a great time of the year. And I hope I'm not making you miss something outside that you would love to be doing. This is the annual meeting for the year 2025 CSA. And we'll have, it's an open meeting for questions later on. You can ask live questions. So please stay on if you have questions you want to ask in person. The first thing I will do will be call the meeting to order. The next thing to do, Mr. Secretary, will establish a quorum. Carrie, we have a quorum?
Yes, Chairman, we do have a quorum, and with just under 30%.
Okay, that's very good. The part of the announcements and things, the routine that I have to do is announce the nominating committees for both Class A and Class B. Class A are our single property, and Class B are multifamily. Class A, the nominating committee is David Pardue, Bill Johnson, Andrea Tarbach. Class B is Tim Stearns, Bob Gossett, Don Sigmund. In addition to that, I need to inform you that the record date for the board elections has been set at October 1, 2025. Now, the record date means if you're a holder of a deed at that time, you get to vote. If you've transferred your property after that time, then the person can't vote. So the vote goes with whoever has the deed to the property as of October 1. And that'll be for the election of the board members. That's the purpose of that election. The next thing I'd like to do is that we had 3 board members whose terms ended on December 31, 2024. It was Ann Esposito, Larry Mufshin, and Tom Sharp, for which we have given them thanks repeatedly in meetings. But I don't mind doing it again simply because when people volunteer to the extent of time level and commitment they make here, I believe we need to recognize them and thank them again and again for their service. These 3 people served in various capacities and they served very well, and we have some progress made specifically because of things that they individually did. The new directors elected, and there'll be another slide to replace them. Bill Johnson was elected. Tom Sharp was reelected. Remember, he was retired and he had a term open, so he ran and was reelected. And Jennifer Erickson. And so you have the 2 boards. I was always confused that we showed the board from just the previous year, but not for what the current year was. And so I've asked, and we've done this now for 2 years, to show both boards so you would know, because the people up there right now are the people that you will be dealing with as board members for this year. I think then I'm going to make some remarks. Now, you're going to get the important information from our CEO and our treasurer. I'm not going to give you statistics and facts. I'm going to give you an overview of what I believe is going on and what I see. And I'm going to start with a remarkable event that occurred about 4 or 5 weeks ago in the Forest Preserve. It was a party in the Pines. If you've never been there and been at that event, you need to go. I'm told this was the largest participation in that event. As my wife and I walked up to the gate to get our badges, I actually could feel the vibes of happiness and positivity. I could hear the jokes and the conversations, all lighthearted, and people having fun. That's just so great a thing to see. And so what I decided to do, and I do this in a different fashion, but I decided to table hop. And my table hop means get a little food, go sit down at a table with people we don't know, talk with them, find out who they are, how long they've lived here, what they think about Sea Pines, and without telling them who I am. And then, because I got a little bit of food, I go and get up and go get another little bit of food, and I go to another table and I do the same thing, and I do that until my wife cuts me off from food altogether, and then I just go table hop, period, without food. But I have to tell you, as we talked and listened, it was a positive crowd. Everybody was very complimentary of their life in Sea Pines and that they enjoyed their life in Sea Pines. I got around, I was taking group photographs of people who were trying to get selfies of them, and we talk even more about something, and that was a different group. And while it's not important to any of you, before I left, somebody did recognize me and came up to me and says, I'm a Notre Dame graduate just like you are, though he's 12, 13 years younger than me. And I still do remember your name, Mike. As even for an old person like me, I hadn't forgot it. But what also remarked to me is the people who came up to me and said, you're the CSA guy, right? And I said, what? You're the CSA guy. You're the one we see on the internet. And I said, yes. Said, well, we want you to know how happy we are with everything CSA is doing. We want you to know that we've been here for years, and this is the best kept years that we've seen recently, the work going on and everything that's happening. And believe it or not, I encountered the same thing at Heritage. At Heritage, for those of you who went, they put this mesh fence up, which first of all irritated my wife to no end. But it kept people from entering the courses from the house, and we boarded the course. So people on the house side who walked back and forth, they had to walk very close to us, within 3 or 4 feet. I had at least a dozen people who I did not know came over and said the same kind of thing. You are the CSA guy, aren't you? And I said, yes. And they would offer me the same kind of comments about the job and the work that CSA was doing. So I guess I've got a more pleasant nickname now than some I've had in my past. That CSA guy is a lot nicer than a lot of the names that I've been called. And I'm sure I've been called some of those other names as well. It is interesting that even happens in the grocery store. This one guy comes up to me and he tells me he's a part-time resident here. You're the guy I see on the internet, and I live whatever, and he just starts talking. I'm assuming that they recognize me by my suspenders, because you don't see a whole lot of people out there with suspenders. But the important part about what I'm saying is that people felt happy enough with their life in Sea Pines that they just volunteered. And they just, that they were happy. They came up to me, they felt like they had to say something. And that is a real pleasure of, to experience that and to see that. And it also gives me an opportunity when people do that to have personal interactions, because I do ask people about various things about their lives in Sea Pines. And there are 2 comments that stick in mind regularly to me that I keep remembering. 2 almost exact comments by 2 people who I had that discussion with. And they said, what is there not to like in Sea Pines? And I think it's very important that people feel that way. And I have sensed this attitude and this change ever since we've been working, the work we've been doing. We've got involved in operating and doing the daily routines. We've got to make sure that the safety, the security, the streets, the drainage, and we're working on them, and people see us doing that. We're doing the work of government to enhance the community. We're doing the work that needs to be done for the people. And, I don't read social media, and I've told you that. And people tell me if you read social media, you will see, various number of complaints. I always tell people you can write me. an email and I'll read it. I do want to add a caveat. I will not answer you. If I answered every email that was written to me, I would not have time to do anything during the day. But I do take and read every one of them. And your emails get forwarded to proper person in staff for consideration. And many of the emails you write could be sent directly to those people, but if you don't know how and you send them to me, I do not mind forwarding them on. I learned a long time ago I'm not worried about trying to please everyone. I recognize that we always have people that will have different ideas. Some of it's legitimate, some of it may not be, but they're different ideas, and people are entitled to those different ideas. But in leadership positions, I've always taken that leaders have to lead. Someone has to make a decision. And while there may be multiple decisions that can be satisfactory, somebody's got to make a choice. And if you don't make a choice, your choice is to do nothing and never go ahead. So I've always striven that we act to make a decision. Now, I'm not saying Sea Pines is perfect, but it is a great place to enjoy life to its fullest. I came here to extend my life. I came here because I felt this was a vibrant place with a lot of activities. I enjoyed the fact that we had all of the beaches that we had restaurants within Sea Pines, we had pickleball, we had tennis, we had 4 golf courses, we have water sports, miles of leisure trail, all of the things that we have within our community, that to the point that there are times we don't even need to leave the community to do almost anything we want to do, or at the most maybe go 100 yards outside of our community. There's no other community like that I can think of in this area. You don't have to join a country club if you don't want to. It can be the lowest cost. You have the right to make your choices on things of that nature, to spend money. And while some of these communities are spending just tens upon tens of thousands of dollars each year just for the right to live there and take care of that, you don't. You can pick and choose. So what I do want to talk about a little bit is our forest preserve. We have one of the greatest attractions in Hilton Head. I'm told it's one of the top 3 attractions for visitors coming in to see Hilton Head. And I would really like to enhance that attraction. And we have some things that we're in conversation on some things. And I hope that we can continue those before I get out of here. I'm gonna talk about another irritant that I hear a lot of, e-bikes and e-scooters. All of y'all who write me about e-bikes and e-scooters, you really don't have to, because I got the world-class spotter. My wife, who rides with me, can tell one from a half a mile away. And if she had her way, I would stop the car, jump out, and run and chase them down. And I tell her, you realize that those days are long gone for me. I'm not gonna be able to chase anybody down. But I do hear every one of them. And yes, they're out there. Yes, we do try to patrol it. We try to take them off the streets. We could hire umpteen more security or code enforcers, and we could pull them off. There's a question of balancing the amount of money to go to personnel to do that, or using that money on other things and making decisions as the priority of where you spend money. And so we try to balance that. Another continuing agitation for everybody is our traffic. I set up a traffic force a couple of years ago. And this is probably the most complicated, convoluted process that I've been involved in all of my life associating with government. We have 3 roads leading into our circle. They are owned by the state and they're within the jurisdiction of the town. We have one leg of that road from Greenwood to the gate, for the circle to the gate on Greenwood. It's going to take an enormous amount of money to try to come to some kind of solutions. We have engaged a national traffic engineering firm that we have been working with. They happen to be a firm that the state works with and a firm that the town works with. We have talked to the secretary of the DOT. We've talked with Senator Tom Davis, and we've talked with the town. All of the conversations lead us to have hope that it would be a possibility that the state will be able to take over this, subject to getting money. Senator Davis is our source of getting money. We did not get past the 1% sales tax, which would have provided money for this. So we have to look to the state for money because it is an enormous amount of money. And we were real close to this back at the time that Helene came through. And all meetings and everything had been scheduled to try to bring that to the next step were canceled because the state had to deal with all the catastrophic effect of the roads and territories and properties that were caused by Helene. I think we're back at the stage now that we're real close again, and and we hope to move forward on that. It's still a matter of Senator Davis helping us find the money. He has reiterated several times to a number of us that he has the ability, he thinks, to do that. I don't want to say anything too definite because I can't say anything too definite, but it is moving in the right direction. I hope to have this, move further. We keep setting time deadlines for ourselves, but any deadline we set for ourselves is meaningless because it involves all three parties in what goes on and what they're doing. So I think it's a fair statement to say we're a lot closer than we've ever been to getting the solution, but don't hold your breath. We're not there yet. Now, there are some of you who offer solutions, short-term solutions on Greenwood, apart from the gate to the circle. And you have your various ideas as to what should be done. Well, in addition to what I just said, our national traffic engineers also have been dwelling in that. We've had the state DOT engineers down and they visited the site with us and looking at that. And so we're going to rely on these people. We take what you suggest, we go through, and what appears to be workable has not been considered. We get it to the traffic engineers and we see if it's something they think can be worked into what they're doing. We're going to do what an experienced national traffic engineering firm recommends. And I appreciate your concern. We all have suggestions as to how to improve everything down there, from the access, ingress, and egress, including me. But that doesn't mean it's, it's any better. You will see some things down there. You'll see additional signage and things and items like that we're going to try. But all of it is an attempt. Now, throughout my tenure as chairman of the board, I've strived for CSA to do the necessary work to enhance our lives. And that's the critical infrastructure: paving, drainage, safety, security, beautification, etc. To some of you, that's boring, but that's the work of government, and that's the type of work of government that makes the community operate and allows things to happen and satisfies people. It's that everyday work to maintain and protect the community that is so important to the happiness that you get and your members have in our community. So as long as I'm involved, and it won't be much longer, they kick me out at the end of this year, and you'll have a new model to fuss at and complain about. But CSA is going to continue to strive to give you a safe place to live and enjoy, and to enhance your roads and your drainage, to protect us when best they can from climate events, and to reduce the damages, and to make our lives in Sea Pines the kind of life that brought us here in the first place, and that keeps us here now. Because I assume that even those people who don't like things, they're happy enough that they want to stay in Sea Pines. And, they have particular issues that bother them. So I want to thank you all for the courtesies you have shown me. I've tried to do the best I can for our community and for the wonderful people who live here. We are a very caring community, and that's also one of the things that brought me here. That when someone gets sick, they've made friends, and those friends jump in to try to help them. We're very much like I remember the small town I grew up in. You knew a lot of people and they helped a lot of people and you relied on a lot of people. And people are what makes it, and the kindness of people is what makes a community great. And it's the kindness of the people in Sea Pines that I think, makes a difference on top of everything else that we do. So with that now, and me going through that, and I could talk for another half an hour, as lawyers could just talk and talk and talk. I'm going to turn the meeting over to our president and CEO, who will talk more about finance tax. Finance to Leanne Leahy, our treasurer, will talk about finances. These are the people on the board are smart. These are the people who know what they're doing. They're professionals in their fields. So you have a free professional that's actually providing you expertise that will require a lot of money for us to just go out and hire and keep on staff. And to this, I have to tell you that our entire board is like this, very accomplished people, and they devote their time. So I thank the board. And then also, before I sign off, I want to thank the staff, because the staff does the work. And without the staff, the people out there that you see working, people in this office working, nothing would get done. So thank you all. And Sea Pines, God bless you. I'll be around to answer questions at the end. And now I turn it over to our treasurer, Leanne Leahy.
Okay, Victoria, if you could share the screen.
Go ahead and I'll.
Okay, all right. So hi, I am Leanne Leahy, the treasurer, the volunteer treasurer of the CSA board. I've been the treasurer now for 2.5 years. I'm completing my 3rd year this year. I have a number of topics that I will discuss during these slides, and I wanted to thank the staff and the community, as David already has, for their input and assistance during the year. My presentation will focus on 2024, the activities and accomplishments, and have a sneak peek at 2025 to 2028's capital plan. So first, let me, great, now it's not moving the slides. Okay.
I need to do it manually, Victoria.
Yeah, if you could. Okay, so we have a annual audit that's completed every year, and then the year-end audit for 2024 was completed by Elliott Davis. The final audited statements will be available on the website just shortly after this meeting. And I'm happy to say there were no adjustments or errors identified during the audit and no internal control issues. For those of you who think that an audit is very simple to prepare for and then undergo, you are mistaken. And I really appreciate this. Thanks to the staff for the excellent outcomes. This is the gold standard of what an audit should be. And we are very proud to produce the financial statements and then have the auditors not make any changes. So that is a huge sense of accomplishment. And I really, really appreciate the staff's assistance. That's not the only thing the staff does during the year, but it's an important benchmark of the excellence in our financial reporting. If you could move to the next slide, please. So to focus on the year-end financial statements, I took a trend and looked at the trends of the last 3 years. And you'll see that I have a, Victoria, you were able to get rid of the gallery? Yeah, just so we can see. So I've got the 3 year of trends for total assets, total liabilities, and fund balances. And I will say that we've maintained strong cash and investments. And partially, you can see that the assets have gone up quite a bit. And that's a result of people prepaying their assessments prior to the end of the year that actually will be utilized and recognized in the next year. We don't have any debt outstanding related to external sources, but we do have available a line of credit. Our strong capital reserves are in the fund balances, and as you can see, they've stayed relatively the same. We have a board policy for two specific fund balances, capital replacement, and that has been maintained within policy. And you will note that we will have a capital reserve study done in the late 2025 and update the requirement for that reserve. And then there's a $2.5 million emergency fund that is maintained by policy. Next slide. So here we have a summary of the results of operations. And I think what's interesting to look at when you try to dive down into the income statement is that our expenses fluctuate very much so depending on the major repairs and maintenance expenses that happen during the year. So what I found interesting was the comparison of total expenses before M&R expenses, which is the last line item, and looking at the trend from the 2022 amount of only almost 13 million to about 15.4 million. I will get into the reasons for those changes on the next slide. So on the revenue side, I think it's important to look at the high level as well. Just to focus folks on the fact that over $70 million of revenues are generated by gate entry and permit fees. And that's about a third of our funding each year. And most of the remainder of the revenues are associated with property ownership, whether residential or commercial. If you think about the mix of this revenue, what would it look like if we didn't have the attractive amenities provided by the resort and the commercial entities and the millions of dollars that they've invested that attract and provide for our gate revenue? And I'll dig into that gate revenue in just a minute. But if you look at rental registration fees that were newly instituted, they've maintained about the same amount. We've talked to you about the 2,100 units rented within Sea Pines, which includes some timeshares. Residential and commercial assessments have increased by about 800,000, primarily governed by inflation factors and the resort revenue increases that are within the formula, within the covenants. And then the critical infrastructure assessments, again, have gone up, governed by inflation factors and revenue growth. Next slide. So here's a picture of the gate fees. And while you look at the numbers and you say, well, what does this all mean? It means that we have a mixture of gate fees and permits that we sell. And that mixture can vary depending on what activities are happening within Sea Pines. One amazing statistic that Chief Count shared with the board was that there's about 4 million vehicles that actually go through the gates and went through the gates in 2024. And about 60% of those went through the property owner lane. So think about the gate officers and the work that they're doing at both the Greenwood Gate and the Ocean Gate, and how many touch points they make with those customers that go through the gates. That is a significant piece of our focus here at Sea Pines, is getting folks in and out of the property. Now you'll see that the different green areas, and I have a red pointer, I'm focusing on 2022, 23, and 24. And you'll see that the bottom part of the bar chart is focused on the daily gate passes, big number. And then it moves up to annual decal revenue and short-term rental passes. And there's some shift in the mix, but by and large, they're moving in the same direction. But one thing we have noted is that daily gate passes sold and issued were lower in 2024 versus 2023. And we're monitoring this trend for 2025. I will mention that when commercial vehicles come through the gate and those big 18-wheel truckers or other large vehicles, that depending on the number of axles, they actually pay more to enter Sea Pines because there's more wear and tear on the roads because of this. One thing to note is the 4 million vehicles that go through, security just started counting those in 2024. So we'll look for trends moving into 2025. Next slide, please. So the expense trends. One of the things that I find summarizes what is Sea Pines is page 3 of the annual report. So last Thursday, in the Thursday update, Stephanie sent out the annual report. And on page 3, it shows the CSA scope of work. And I hope I'm not stealing Sam Bennett's thunder, but this is a page that every single person in this community should read to appreciate the complexity and the number of activities that take place and need to be managed and monitored within the community. So when you think of the expenses associated with managing all those activities, we have not only major repairs and maintenance that we talk a lot about, and I'll get into on the next slide, but we have maintenance, looking at those operations and the focus on the increases in expenses on stormwater division, the arbor care division, the beach access division, and the roadside division. And a lot of times, what you'll find in our annual report are pictures of the actual activities of our maintenance division and the number of folks out there, working day to day. Safety and security is another area where the board decided to make some investments in retention-related wage increases and attracting the right personnel. We've come a long way in the last 2-3 years relative to that. But we also have an armed guards, SLED certified personnel. And anytime you put a firearm in the hand of someone, those insurance premiums go way up. So we have invested not only in the personnel, but also the insurance premiums. And then in general administrative, we've seen increases in the insurance premiums for the normal type of insurance, not just the armed personnel. And we've also expanded the community service division. Next slide, please. So major repairs and replacements. This is a slide that gets presented to the board. It's part of the annual budgeting process that we go through and monitor on a quarterly basis. And we have listed the projects, the major projects that we have focused on during the year, with the budget on the right-hand side and then the actual expenditures. And you'll see that we had budgeted over $10 million to be expended and spent about 7.6. And primarily that was a result of not being able to get all the anticipated construction done at Lighthouse Lane by the end of the year. So we actually rolled forward those amounts into 2025. They were all approved and just rolled forward as for expenditures in 2025. Next slide, please. So this slide may look familiar because I presented something similar in the November board meeting. And our critical infrastructure revenues are collected and segregated for specific activities as outlined in the referendum. So you may recall that those specific activities had to do with the repair, replacement, addition, and improvement of the roads, bridges, bulkheads, leisure trails, stormwater facilities and systems in or servicing Sea Pines. So very important to note that we take that job very seriously within the organization of CSA, and the finance has strict controls in place to monitor the types of revenues collected and how those amounts were expended. So you can see on the far right column that the critical infrastructure revenue collected is about 12.7 million. And the amount that the operating budget has been put forward to support these activities is 5.7, for a total of about 18.4, what I'll call the source of the critical infrastructure spending. Next slide, please. This slide details out the 5.7 million that the operating budget has supported through 2024, and shows you some of the specific types of activities within that 5.7 million. Next slide. This is, again, may look familiar. This is a more detailed look at the spending on projects funded by the Critical Infrastructure Fund, and shows on the left-hand side the projects that were listed within the referendum. Drainage was listed as a total. It did not have specific projects listed, as we had not yet identified the specific ones. But the others were all listed in the referendum. You can see the numbers for the estimates in the blue. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the amounts that have been spent through 2024. And then adding in the amount funded by operations of 5.7, there's about 17.7 million expended on critical infrastructure activities. Of note, North Sea Pines Drive was about 2.6 million, was the first major project undertaken, about 2 miles of road. That went really well and on budget. When you turn to South Sea Pines Drive, it was a lot different story. It was more complex. The under the road damaged drainage pipes, ditches, all those things are much more complicated and had to be dealt with as we move through that project. And it was actually 5 phases, and again, about 2 miles, but about $8.1 million. So the size of the project of 2 miles may seem the same as North Sea Pines Drive, but the level of complexity was much more difficult and a challenge to move through it, and much more costly. We've incurred through 24 some funds on Lighthouse Lane and ditch cleanout, but there's much more to come on Lighthouse Lane, as it has 3 more phases that go through 2027. Next slide, please. So 2025, here's a sneak peek on the capital projects that the board has approved. These were presented in 2024 and shared with the community and the board. I've put them together to show the roll forward amounts as well, because those were important, that we didn't get to spend those, didn't have a chance to spend those funds in 24 and needed them to roll into 2025. So we are managing and monitoring the budget of about 8.7 million relative to what we hope to accomplish. South Sea Pines Drive and Lighthouse Lane driving most of those. Another area that is one of those lessons learned is that we understand that the complexity of what's under the road will make a huge difference on the amount of funds that will be expended on these projects going forward. And we're doing the engineering studies in advance on Otter Road and Fawn Lane and South Beach Lane to provide as accurate budget numbers as possible. Next slide, please. So just to summarize, one of the things that's really critical in my mind as a treasurer is to make sure that we're doing and monitoring on a quarterly, at least quarterly basis, so that we can report to the board and to the community. We have developed, or are in the process of developing, a 3-year capital spending plan to look to 2026 to 2028. And we're focused on the priority of the projects that should be coming up next. And we've been discussing costs with our vendors, those inflation factors, supply chain issues, et cetera. And again, as I mentioned, we're doing refined engineering estimates to make sure we have really good cost estimates for future projects. I want you to know that the Finance and Executive Committee, and especially the board, are strongly committed to good internal controls, to govern our collections and expenditures of all funds. Our focus is on enhanced management and board reporting, and data sharing with the community is a very high priority, as you will have witnessed over my tenure as treasurer. Thank you for your time listening, and feel free to reach out to me at any time. So at this point, I will turn it over to our CEO, Sam Bennett.
I don't need it.
Okay.
Thank you, Leanne and David. I appreciate the perspective you both shared on Sea Pines. I want to take just a few minutes and talk about our organization a little more in depth than what last year looked like. But I want to start by sharing and reminding the community that we put our annual report out last week. And this is a wealth of information about what we do here in Sea Pines, what CSA does on a day-to-day basis. It is very comprehensive in who we are as an organization, and it's also extremely detailed on what went on last year through our work products. I want to thank Stephanie Farah for putting that together. She worked with the entire management team of CSA to do that, and it's a very thorough document. It's very well done. And I will come back to some of the additional work that Stephanie's going to be presenting to the community later on in my comments. First of all, I want to take a moment and I want to thank Victoria Shanahan for all of her hard work of this past year. And the clean audit, as Leanne mentioned, Victoria and her team do a tremendous job putting those things together. Having a clean audit is extremely important. Leanne and Victoria have done a great job of making sure that our organization is where it needs to be, both with internal controls and reporting to the community. I'm pleased to say I think we've got more to come for external reporting to the community. You'll see more of that here in the next quarter. Again, more of that when I talk about communications. Our security staff, security team led by Chief of Security Director Joe Count. Joe and his team continue to do an amazing job, as Leanne referenced earlier. We do have a team of sworn officers that serve this community who are basically deputized law enforcement officers who have the ability to write tickets and to make arrests and do the things necessary to keep this community safe. That's unusual for most communities, but it's not here in Sea Pines. This community predated the town of Hilton Head and has always relied on those officers. And when I first came to work here, we were approaching almost a 50% turnover rate in the security department. Thanks to the support of the community and the board, with the increases in revenues that we've seen and being able to adjust salaries to make ourselves competitive, we're down to a 20% turnover rate, which is really good in a department like that. So we've trended down for the last 4 years, and I hope to continue to see that trend. But I'm happy to report that continues to go in the right direction. The key for us is making sure that we've got the best people, and to do that, we've got to be willing to bring them here and pay them to stay here. Because when folks realize they work in Sea Pines, they become attractive targets for the other communities. So thankful for the board and the community for supporting us in that. And it pays off in the safety of our community. We are a very safe community. If you call our dispatch, our folks are there. And as y'all all know, we're a very busy community with a lot of activity. So having our own security department is very important to us. Leanne touched on much of the critical infrastructure that we've been working on. I want to thank Russell Fredericks for his hard work in that area. Russell manages basically all of those projects. And so we don't do much of that work in-house physically. We contract most of it out, 99% of it out, and Russell handles that 99%. So he is a very busy guy. He's done a great job. As Leanne mentioned, we had a lot of challenges moving into South Sea Pines Drive with the configuration of the road, utility conflicts, the number of curb cuts, just a number of things putting together, a 40-year road back together. But Russell and his team, well, he is the team. Russell manages it with his team of contractors, and I think the product speaks for itself. That road is there. The only thing we'll need to do for that road moving ahead is repave it. It will outlast all of us now. And that's when we do these critical infrastructure projects, that is our goal, to have a product when we're done that will be here past our lifetime. As David Ellis mentioned earlier in his comments about how great the community looks, that falls under Jared Mays, our Director of Operations and Maintenance. Jared and his team do a great job. I had the pleasure of getting to host a number of folks during the Heritage Golf Tournament coming into Sea Pines from all over the state of South Carolina and really the Southeast. And their first words to me was, "Wow, this community is absolutely beautiful. How do you guys do it?" And the answer is, we've got the support of a board and a community, but we've got great people that work for us that manage it. And Jared is one of those folks. He and his team, Doug Cook, they take care of not just the stuff you see above the ground, but the day-to-day maintenance of the stormwater system, as well as the recycling and the pit area, the landscape debris removal. Those guys do a great job of keeping this community looking well. So please thank them when you see them. David Ellis also touched on the Forest Preserve. I want to thank David Henderson for his efforts in the Forest Preserve. It really is one of the most unique features in Hilton Head. And we've got 4 miles of beaches, which we all love, but having a 600-acre forest preserve in the middle of our community is something special. And David does a great job in that area. He's done a very good job over the last few years of control burns and keeping the fire materials down in that forest preserve. And that's something we hadn't done in the past. And I think as we've experienced the wildfires across the United States in various areas, having someone who's got the ability to manage that 600 acres from a ecological and a wildlife perspective to keep it safe means very, very much. And David has done a great job with that. He will continue to do a great job with that. And I appreciate all the work David does in the area of the Forest Preserve. It is a jewel. Stephanie Farah, I mentioned her at the beginning. She put the annual report together, but Stephanie also directs all of our communication activities. And over the course of the last 18 months, she has done a fantastic job of really engaging the community through our enhanced communications, and has some great ideas coming forth in this quarter and in the next quarter with community dashboards that will have more financial data on a quarterly basis coming to the community. It will have more gate data, just all those things that we hear folks are looking for in terms of wanting to know what's going on with traffic, calls for service, those things. We're going to be putting dashboards together, and Stephanie's working on that, and I'm excited to see what comes out of that. I think the community would be pleased with that information moving ahead. And finally, the person who's not on my list, most of you don't see her or talk to her unless you call me, is Sandra Archer, my executive assistant. Sandra keeps all those folks I just mentioned together and running as necessary, and I want to thank her for doing that. She's a great asset to our community. Now, that's the team that works for me. And if those folks are extremely important, but as David Ellis mentioned and Leanne mentioned, and I hope you all recognize, there are another 115 folks that work for Sea Pines CSA day in and day out, that come to work every day to keep the gates moving, keep the storm ditches clean, and keep the place looking great. And I really want to thank those folks. And I would ask you as community members, when you see those folks, to thank them. We are the last stop when you come to work. There are so many other opportunities for employees to come to work and to work in other places. And it's important that we show our employees our appreciation. And we do that as best we can as an organization. Again, I appreciate the board's opportunity and things that they let me do to encourage our employees. But I'd ask you all as the membership, when you see as employees, to thank them because they're making a commitment, a time out of their life to drive to get here and to be part of this community. And they do it because they love it. And so any thoughts and appreciation you can share those folks, I would appreciate it. It helps us for them to know their work is appreciated day in and day out. And many of you do. So thank you for that. For those of you who do, if you have an opportunity in the future, y'all please do. Leanne touched on what we're doing moving ahead. David's touched on how great things are. I look forward to answering any questions you have. I am thankful to be president of CSA. I appreciate the confidence that the board has placed in me, as well as that the community's placed in us. And we're available. David said earlier he doesn't get paid to do this, but I do, and I am glad to do it. It's a great job. It's a great role to have, and we're blessed. This community is unique. We are genuinely a unicorn when it comes to communities. You won't find another place like Sea Pines as it relates to how we work together with our resort partners, our commercial partners, and our residential partners. It's a special place, and our goal my goal as president and CEO is to make sure it stays a special place both now and in the future. And we will continue to work hard with the board and the membership to do that. So, Mr. Chair, those are my short comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions you or the treasurer may have, or if you'd like, we can move to the next part of the meeting.
Let's move to the next part of the meeting.
All right, then I think, Stephanie, we're ready to take questions.
So at this time, if any participants would like to ask a live question, please go ahead and click the raise hand button on your Zoom. Sam, at this time, we do not have any live questions. We did have a question come into the inbox earlier this morning from Leslie Casey.
I have that one, Stephanie. I'll read it and do my best to answer it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There's a house being built across the street. Dump trucks are dumping stones after 5 p.m. and at 7 this morning, brought over a small tractor. Are there certain hours that are able to they have to abide by? Also, they parked a rig in our debris dump. So who's going to watch over all future problems? Not happy. You will hear from me. Ms. Casey, I have made our loan folks aware of this, as well as our security folks, and they will be making sure that contractor is acting appropriately and following our rules. Right now, the rules for construction are from 7 in the morning to 7 at night on Monday through Saturday. But we've added additional rules in place so that the contractor must park appropriately and must also be a good neighbor. And so if you have issues or concerns when that's not happening, please call CSA dispatch and we'll get the appropriate personnel out there to take care of that.
Thank you, Sam. We do have a question from Mr. David May. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to go ahead and unmute, and you are live to ask your question.
Okay, a quick question. I see the security team out and about hanging on the roads, and as I understand it, they're writing tickets, real tickets. But that revenue goes to Beaufort County, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So our officers, when they write a state summons, those dollars are collected and go to Beaufort County. Typically, our officers, though, their goal is compliance, not enforcement. And so their first line of attack is always to, I believe, write a warning if they can, unless the circumstances justify otherwise. But you are correct. If they write an actual traffic citation, those revenues to go to Beaufort County.
So if the case is to actually, enhance the safety and the security, I guess I would suggest that they use the white trucks instead of the gray trucks hiding behind trees and bushes. The old adage, if people see the traffic enforcement, it'll have better results than the latter.
Yes, sir. That's a great point.
Especially if we're not getting the revenue.
Yes,
right?
sir. So don't disagree. In fact, that's one of the reasons we've changed the color scheme effective last year of our vehicles. So the ones that are gray we're phasing those out.
Oh,
and that's why you see the new white ones. That was one of the suggestions that Chief Count made is again, our goal is deterrence, and having a vehicle that folks recognize as a law enforcement vehicle, whether it's speeding or just general property crime, is much better than having something that's hard to identify as a law enforcement vehicle. So that's one of the reasons we've gone to those new vehicles, and you'll see all of our law enforcement vehicles transition to the white.
Terrific. I wish there was a way we could keep the revenue, but okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do have another question from Miss Sarah Eggleston, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell her to talk. You may unmute and you are on the line, Sarah. There you go.
Okay, I have my CSA owner's card on my phone. And recently when I was there, it was not accepted. And I was wondering why that is.
When you were where, may I ask, ma'am?
I went to the shuttle parking lot for Heritage. And I was told that cards on the phone were not accepted.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I will check with the chief of security. That's one of the things we've talked about is moving all of our cards to electronic, just like your Apple Wallet or other things. So I will happily check on that and get back to you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, at that time, that is all the questions we have, Sam.
David, you.
I think that's fine. We thank everybody for attending. We appreciate the questions. And again, if there's anything else that you forgot and want to ask, just go and send it in an email and we will read it and try to address it. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much. David, the meeting's adjourned.
Yes, you can do that.